Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another expert exchange where we address real questions with expert answers. My name is Morgan Taylor. I'm the editor of Abode magazine at HAA, and I will be your host today. Today is Tuesday, August 11th, and today's topic is CapEx projects. For our viewers today, please ask any questions that you might have along the way in the Zoom chat box or via Facebook Live in the comments if that's where you're joining us today. Once we get through the questions that we've curated, we will get to your questions, but don't hesitate to ask ahead of time. This is a micro webinar, so we're going to try to keep the session to our 30-minute time window. A quick disclaimer before we get started, we are not public health experts nor attorneys. This webinar is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal or professional advice. No HAA member should act on the basis of any material contained in the webinar without obtaining proper legal or other professional advice specific to their situation. Please consult with your management company or property owner to address specific issues and to form your own company guidelines. All right, and today we are here with the experts Billy Griffin of Camp Construction and David Lindley of FSI Construction. We're super excited to have them here today with us, and I'm going to read their bios. Billy Griffin is the Vice President of Sales for Camp Construction Services. He joined Camp in 2013 with more than 23 years of experience serving the multifamily industry. Prior to Camp, Billy was the Central Regional Director for Criterion Brock, and he was the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Century AC, where he worked for 20 years. And then David Lindley, he is a Vice President for FSI Construction. He started in the multifamily industry in 2012 as a maintenance coordinator. He then made the switch to the supplier side with FSI, where he has been for over 5 years. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
All right, super happy to have you guys on. And we're gonna go ahead and jump into the questions. We're gonna switch off from Billy and David. So first question is gonna go to Billy. How has COVID-19 affected capital projects?
COVID-19 has definitely, like everything in the world, affected capital projects. We saw them, a lot of them get put on hold. A lot of them, got put, pause. Hey, let's see what's going to happen. Let's see, where this is all going to turn out. As things shut down, jobs shut down, and as things started picking back up, we've seen, some of the bigger companies say, hey, every person has to have a temperature taken and a log with that, and every person has to have a face mask, and every person we have to have hand washing stations and things like that. So it has definitely affected some of the bigger jobs, like roof jobs and things outside. They've continued, but some of the exterior jobs and just being on site, people want you to be safe and they want you to be mindful of their residents and make sure you're taking every precaution necessary to not spread the disease.
Can you, Billy, really quick talk about like certain product shortages?
Yeah, so there have been some product shortages. Some of the larger manufacturers like Whirlpool, they had some people get sick, so they shut their lines down. So there's been some air conditioning companies that have also shut their lines down, and there's been some product shortages. Cabinet manufacturers, obviously as people are making things, if they get somebody that is sick and they have to self-quarantine, their places are shut down for weeks on end until they get back up to running. So but things are slowly getting back to somewhat normal, whatever that is.
Awesome, great, thank you for that. The next question is for David. How are contractors handling interior and exterior jobs with residents being at home more than ever?
Yeah, everybody's home right now. I think the most important thing is, staying up current with the CDC and your local guidelines and making sure that you're compliant with whatever municipality you're in, city, state, or local. But other than that, really being predictable and communicating. These residents are there, making sure that everyone's wearing their PPP, doing your temperature readings, you're communicating to the office and they're communicating to the residents. It's really important to be where you're supposed to be, minimize the time spent in common areas. And if you can do those things, you can still kind of function, but there's always going to be a level of, unrest in this environment. So just being mindful and communicating.
Definitely. Especially with residents, working from home and all that. Billy, do you see a lot of capital projects being pushed off to 2021, or are you seeing that investors are pushing really hard to complete these projects this year?
Really good question. I'm going to kind of back up and say back in March and April when everything first started getting shut down, there was so much happening, so much activity in so many different cities. We were seeing people, looking to get plans out, looking to get permits done and to get moving forward. And everything just kind of came to a halt. Everything slowed down. And as you talk to some of the investors and asset managers, they were like, well, probably 1st of June, we're going to start all these back up and all these new projects are going to get going again. And as June kind of came on, they're like, oh, well, it's going to probably be the 1st of July. And some of them came on, some of the smaller ones, some of the, and again, it's kind of a case by different management companies and asset managers. But we have seen quite a few people that had planned on jobs starting in Q3 and Q4 of this year that they're going to wait till after the election. They're going to wait until, the first part of 2021 to see what, where we're at. What are we still in lockdown? Are things back to somewhat of a different normal? Now, there are jobs going on. There are people investing money. We are continuing to see jobs start back up that were already going. But a lot of the newer jobs that we're seeing that people are going to kick off, the later part of this year have been kind of pushed into the first part of next year.
Interesting. David, would you like to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, I think to Billy's point, we did see some things stop momentarily, and then we put in protocols to kind of adjust for the situation. But there's still projects happening, and there's some that aren't going to happen. So it's really a case by case, and it really varies from the asset or whoever's managing the assets kind of wants and needs at that point.
Understood. Gotcha. So, and David, what projects are able without delay to be completed right now?
I think just about everything is possible. I think we talked about being mindful, with social distancing and some of the protocols that you would implement or procedures are taking into effect. It may affect duration. I think communication is really important. You may not be able to have as many people in one space that you used to have. If you're doing temperature readings twice a day, you're going to lose that time, projects, material shortage. So I think everything's feasible. It may be on a longer duration. It may not happen as quickly, but the potential for the job to get done is still there. And I see it happening pretty much across the board.
And what are the trending Capital X projects right now? What's being done a lot right now?
Well, more than anything, we saw offices get closed and people take advantage of renovating their office. Had they planned on doing that this year? So in that time frame when no one was in it, they capitalized on the vacancy, and so we had some of those kind of just pop up, maybe ahead of schedule or impromptu. So amenity areas and offices that are closed.
Cool. Billy, I'm curious what you guys are seeing. What are some trending topics on y'all's end?
Yeah, same thing. We've had some student housing jobs that were like, oh no, we're going to put these on hold. So wait, the students are coming back. Let's go now, full, and they're not there. Let's go while they're not even in on site, and let's get these things done even faster than we normally thought they'd be. So, again, I'm surprised at the number of interior renovations that are still continuing, even with people being home. A lot of folks are driving that rent, wanting to drive the rent up, especially after the first year. And that's how they do it, by, renovating interiors. And we're seeing many of those continue. And it's surprising.
Cool. Now, Billy, with some CapEx projects being placed on hold, Do you expect labor prices to rise? And what about product prices?
With construction being considered an essential, business, there are a lot of folks out there ready to work, and with things getting put on hold, there are a lot of really good trades ready to go. So we're making some phone calls, and in the past you get, one or two guys showing up, and now we've got a whole group of people showing up ready to work because a lot of things have been postponed. I think that as things ramp back up, into this year, first part of next year, there will probably be, I don't want to say a labor shortage, but there's going to be a lot of work out there for the really good folks, which usually that in turn drives the price up. If you're really good at what you do and you've got 4 or 5 contractors wanting you to come do that work, then you can kind of set your pace and set your mark for, what you want to charge for things. I also think the same is true with products. I think that, right now that, there's been a delay on things. There's people that are, fully stocked with plenty of products. As things are ramping up, there have been some shortages in some areas, but for the most part, what we do, we've got plenty of people with plenty of product. I think that after the first of the year, if the economy continues to explode like it has the last couple of years, and people continue to invest in their assets, you're going to see some opportunities for people to raise prices and make some more money.
Interesting. David, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I feel similar on what Billy's remarks were. And I also think that some things that haven't increased in price, in some cases over decades, may take the opportunity to correct for inflation. So you've seen that in the past with some other products, but specifically, I can't name any, but I wouldn't be surprised if a handful of products, caught up with, just the inflation over the, past 10 or so years.
And this has me sort of thinking about something else. In a lot of industries, we're seeing a lot of employees shortages. So in the contractor world, do you guys have all your guys, ready to work and available, or are you guys kind of struggling with bodies in terms of labor?
I'll let David go first.
Yeah, we're doing good. Our team has managed to stay healthy, and we've been fortunate to have a steady flow of work. So on our end, we're doing pretty good, and everybody's pretty eager to stay working, and especially in these times. So it's, not business as usual, but everybody's got, to be at work Monday through Friday.
And we're very similar. We've saw some things slow down. We too, knock on wood, have been healthy. And everybody's eager to work and get back to doing what they're doing. There was like a pause. Everybody's like, okay, we took family time, vacation time, whatever you want to call it, where I say vacation at home, staycations, whatever we want to call them. But we have, all of our folks back at work, out on job sites, working on the jobs that are back going. So we're have not experienced a labor shortage or an employee shortage from that standpoint.
That's great. That's great. Now, David, I want, both Billy and David to answer this one, but I'll ask David first. How can we prepare for budget season? How can apartment owners, apartment developers, managers prepare for budget season?
Budget season is always a bit of a hurry up and go experiment. We're always running everybody's budget season. Not everyone, but the vast majority is around this time of year. I think given the environment, just getting a jump on it. I mean, getting to your supplier partners as quickly as possible, and trying to take some time to make sure the expectations and the scope of work of what you're asking is clear. That way you can get it all in a timely manner, and also correct. If we're not going to have in-person visits, or we're not going to be able to do property walks, or we're going to be limited, information is going to be key, and communication is going to be key. So if those two things can take place with a little extra time, I think that everybody will get what they need for budget season.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll tie in and say that, definitely get on it early, make your list early. The other thing I like to do is, when you talk to asset managers or CapEx folks, they've got their vision of what they want. They've got a scope of what they'd like to see done. And it may be, paint these things, or knock this, mailbox down and move it, just some basic things. But if you go out and talk to the manager that's there every day, or the maintenance guy that's there every day, he's got a total different list of what he wants done, the things that drive him or her crazy.
Right.
a lot of times you get out to walk something and you feel like you're being kind of pulled in its budgets. It's like, hey, this is my wish list. So I tell people, it's like, hey, look, I encourage the asset managers and or the CapEx folks to ask their on-site staff, like, hey, if you could have kind of a Christmas list of what you'd like during budget season. It doesn't mean we're going to do it, but what are those things? So we can get them all on a bunch of lists and start working through those instead of getting out to do one thing and spending a whole nother day looking at other things that they're not even going to do anyway. So it's always good. Get out early, communicate up front, and try to find out what it is that they really want done.
Great. Awesome. Billy, this is probably directly for you. James Gregory on Facebook, I believe, he says, I wish I was on the Zoom, but had to take my boy up to Aggie Land. Gig 'em.
Gig 'em. All right. Well, for those of you that it's my subliminal message back here, I want to see football, especially college football, take place. So I've got the little message subliminally behind me, but yes, gig 'em. So.
Awesome. Well, we had some people join in a little bit late, so I may repeat some questions here, but there were some questions that I have that David actually submitted to us. So I'm going to kick it off to David first. And if Billy, if you want to chime in and provide an answer as well, please do so. We talked about residents, but we didn't really talk about the consideration of on-site teams and new operating procedures as it relates to upcoming and ongoing projects. How can you minimize business interruption?
Yeah, it's a whole new world in a lot of cases. And I think there's no one size fits all for this. Every organization is taking a different approach, has different tolerance levels. I think there's some good out of this scenario and people utilizing technologies, definitely expediting that in business and in our business, but also being creative. So, reaching out, figuring out what the best way to communicate is, because someone may not want to see you, someone may not want you on site. It may be that you do a FaceTime walk or, utilize Zoom to have a conversation, but just be open to all options so that they can get what they need. And then just be mindful. I mean, we've always, as suppliers, taken the approach that we don't go to the property at the first of the month. But part of me feels like every day is the first of the month right now for these operators. So just being mindful if they don't get back as quickly as you would normally want them to, or and just knowing that they've got a lot on their plate that they don't deal with normally.
Billy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and like I said, they've got so many, they usually have the folks who are retired or the folks that are there all the time in their office bothering them. Now they've got that magnified by everybody or a lot of folks being at home and residents board coming in, checking on things, what's going on. So their time really is being eaten up by a lot of their residents that usually aren't, because residents usually go about their day, pay their rent, and move on down the road. So to David's point as well, just, communicate, find out how they want to, we as suppliers always feel like, oh, we're here to solve your problems. You got to listen to us. You want to hear from us. We don't realize that there's so many of us that call them every day, and as well as their residents coming in. So find out, as David said, how they want to communicate. Find out if, do they require people to wear a mask if they're going to come on? Because some of them, and some of them don't want you to come to their site, as David said. So find out what their specific rules are to visit their sites if you're going to go visit their site, and make sure that you're, trying to understand their crazy, hectic schedule.
Thank you, guys. With some CapEx projects being put on hold because of COVID, what type of projects should absolutely not wait until next year because it may cause more problems in the long run? Do you guys have anything to say about that? Billy, you can start.
I would say roofing. I mean, that's one of the ones that, you're going to get a lot more damage. You're going to get a lot more, it really, yes, you're going to have residents that are upset because you're banging on the roofs, you're knocking during the day, you got nails, you're having to, secure areas to make them safe with kids and people, a lot more activity going on. But there can be, if you have a lot of roof, leaks and or, roofs that need to be replaced and you don't replace them, it's just going to, cause further rot and wood damage on the inside. So I would highly recommend, go in that direction.
I agree with that. Anything water penetration that has the potential to do further damage over time coming into, a rainy season, if you want to call it that in Houston, anything maybe, life safety, and that's pretty obvious, but those are the kind of projects where you just don't want to delay it because it'll be exponentially worse by 2021.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. All right, folks, it's time for you to start asking questions. I think we've asked all the questions that we have from different viewers. So if you guys have any other questions, this is your time to ask those questions now. Anything and everything under the CapEx Projects sun. Until then, I'm going to go ahead and ask some kind of repeat questions for those who maybe joined us later on. Expecting longer project durations due to CDC guidelines, social distancing, things like that. It's not so much that we don't have contractors to do these projects. It's more so the social distancing and the actual products that are being delayed. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if there's X amount of space in a room and you all have to be 6 feet apart, then, you have to take into consideration the amount of people you can put in there. Also, I think I didn't touch on, as it relates to interiors, if you've got a garden style or a mid-rise product, you've got open air and the impact to residents is less when you're coming in and out on a garden, where if you're going through corridors and use elevators, you really want to minimize the number of trips. So, that could cause a little bit of delay as well. And it's not a bunch individually, but over the duration of the project, it adds up. So just take that into consideration when you're looking at doing one of these interiors, so that you can account for any potential vacancy loss if it's going to take any longer, and if that still works for your performa.
And sometimes we're even limited on, there's only one elevator or one access in and out. And with that many more people there, it does delay. You're like, okay, well, you can use this elevator early mornings from 5 to 9:30, but then you can't, during the day, but then you can't at night. I mean, you've got to really do some planning at times if there's, problems with getting things in and out, especially interiors.
Wow. That's not something I considered. Definitely, social distancing can be very limiting, it sounds like. Is there anything else you guys have to add in terms of capital improvements? I mean, whether it's paint jobs, we talked about roofs, but paint jobs, interior, exterior renovations, anything else that comes to mind?
No, like I said, I think that we've covered a lot of it. If nobody's got any questions, that they can always feel free to email David or myself if they've got them, if there's something that they're curious about.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly encourage you guys to reach out to either Billy or David. If you have any questions, they will certainly help you navigate any challenges you guys may be having on site. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and sign us off today. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for taking the time out to be here with us and for sharing your expertise with us. Next week, we're going to talk about walking residents through HVAC issues without ever having to enter the unit. We'll ask those experts real questions and get expert answers. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, HAA TV, to get these sessions automatically added to your library if you can't join us on Tuesday at noon. Thank you guys so much. If you have any suggestions for upcoming topics, please email us at comm@haaonline.org, and we will try to get it in the lineup. Until then, make it a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.